Greetings Exiles, I'm Raziel, and today I'm going to go over a little project I'm currently working on, which is low-level incursion farming. Now, the interesting thing about this is it requires very little investment, and it's quite fun to do actually. So why would you want to farm low-level incursions instead of just leveling normally? Well, the first reason would be to accumulate leveling gear for people who make a lot of builds like myself. If you're a hardcore player and you want the re-rolling process to be smooth when you die, or if you just want to collect some gear for friends and guildmates like I have done. It also gives us relatively rapid access to some of the nice things that the Incursion temples have to offer, such as the Altar of Corruption, which can give you those sweet double corruptions. The Altar of Sacrifice, which sacrifices a unique for another unique, and that unique could even be a headhunter. And it also gives us access to the Lapidary Lens. Now if you're just starting out, this isn't going to be much use to you unless you buy the high level gems. But it will come in handy, like let's say for example you find it in power or something and you want to push that thing to level 3 straight away. Maybe you get lucky, who knows. But you do have a lot of access to it. All these three can be farmed faster somewhere else, which I'll go over in another guide. But if you're trying to accumulate leveling gear and you want rapid access to these, then this would be the setup for you to use for now. It also has a very low investment in both time and currency to get started. You only need to complete one act and reach level 16, and you also need very little in the way of items, which you could actually just accumulate while running the temple the first couple of times. And lastly, this yields a lot of Vaal orbs. I got close to 30 while I was messing around with it, and pretty much the most common currency you get in there of that tier of currency is Vaal orbs, and you will get a lot of them. And I love corrupting stuff, so this was great for me. With all that said, why wouldn't we want to farm low level incursions? Well, first of all, this isn't going to help us complete our atlas at all, so that's something to consider. Next, any crafting bases we get are going to be terrible, so if we get physical to fire conversion pair of gloves for example, it's not really going to help us much because it'll be item level 6. Talking off the last point, you also get no endgame worthy items, unless of course you get them from the altars of sacrifice or corruption. You never get to level above 16. When you level to 17 you have to immediately level down again, as Alva stops spawning 11 levels above your area. You'll get people on your friends list messaging you why you're still on the ledge at level 16. It's not very challenging really, because well, you're level 16 in a level 6 zone and you've got a bunch of twink gear. It's just not going to be very challenging. And lastly, the profit per hour is probably not comparable to the labyrinth or mapping unless you count the value of the things you're going to be accumulating, such as leveling gear, and the time not spent trading, which is valuable to me because trading can be an aggravation. So how do we accomplish the low level farming? Well, first up, as I said, you complete up to Mavale's caverns and then stop there. If you wanted to, you could go and get the skill point from Act 2, but there wouldn't be very much use for it apart from a little bit more attack speed. Next, we want to make sure that we run the ledge back and forth while staying below level 17. There is a vendor recipe, which is a scouring orb and a scroll of wisdom, which de-levels you, which you'll have to use whenever you reach level 17. Be sure to right click all of your gems so that they don't so that you don't accidentally level them up when you hit 17, as this can be a reflex for some of us. Next we want to obtain maximum movement speed, and we do this by picking a ranger, of course. We also want to spend very little time not moving, which means we don't want to be attacking all the time, and we'll go over how we do that in the build section. You want to do enough damage to kill things quickly enough that it doesn't slow you down. That works off the previous point. And obviously you don't want to die, because dying will either slow you down or destroy your character if you're on hardcore. So the build I've picked is a high movement speed Rain of Arrows Ranger. And the passive tree looks like this. We come down the life section, picking up the physical attack damage and attack speed. We pick up all the attack speed and movement speed that we can possibly get, and a little bit of damage at the top. This is exactly a level 16 build. So just take off points as you level that seem least important, such as these small nodes after the notables that I've picked up for attack speed. Now let's quickly go over the gem setup. First of all, as our main attack, we're using Rain of Arrows or Vaal Rain of Arrows, and this will be linked with Mirage Archer, just so that we can keep moving while we're attacking and destroying everything in our path. Next, Onslaught, so that when we attack ourselves we can keep that Onslaught buff up for 8 seconds, just to get us moving that little bit faster. We then add Added Cold if we have a 4th link. But this is not necessary, I've done the temple quite a few times without it. Next we use Blink Arrow just to move a little bit faster or to cross gaps. We then at level 16 add Herald of Ice and Herald of Ash. And if we have some mana gained on hit gear, we can add Herald of Thunder as well. Now when you use all 3 heralds and you don't have enough mana gained on hit or a large enough mana pool, then it just feels uncomfortable when fighting things like the Omnitect. So only put on Herald of Thunder if you get some decent mana gear, you know, there's some nice mana rings available and that sort of thing. So try it out, keep it in your inventory, in your sockets, and if it feels right, use it. If it doesn't feel right, don't use it. It shouldn't affect your clearing that much. So let's go over the gear. First of all, we use a Quill Rain, fastest attack speed bow in the game, and since we're 10 levels above the content, the damage is just fine with it. Definitely the best option, and it also has mana gained on hit to make it a bit of a smoother experience for us. Next, for our helm, we use Asenath's Mark. Now Asenath's Mark gives us some attack speed and it gives us some movement speed, which is going to be the theme for this gear. Next we use a Briskwrap, attack speed and movement speed. We then use Hyrri's Bite because it gives us a bunch of stats, some area of effect, some life gain on hit, and some attack speed. You can also use Craghead if you just don't feel like buying a Hyrri's Bite, although this might affect you later on when you use your heralds. For the gloves, I'm currently using Nocturnal Caress to get them charges up, but you could also use Sedima's Touch or Ondar's Clasp. I believe Ondar's Clasp is probably going to be the smoothest experience since you stay at full life most of the time. For the belt, I recommend a String of Servitude, the resist version, although you could use a Measure-Naught's Girdle if you wanted more damage. Next, for the boots, when you start out you'll probably be using Wanderlust, but after a couple of temple runs you should pick up a pair of magic or rare metattal boots which give 30% movement speed. For the amulet, Karui board. There's no better for a speed farming low level build. For the rings, start out with Blackheart and keep your eyes peeled for some nice mana or life gain on hit rings from the temple. These will show up fairly early, I'm sure, but Blackhearts are a good substitute otherwise. Lastly, we used 3 Quicksilver Flasks of Adrenaline in this build. Feel free to pick up rares from the incursions and stuff to get the alterations necessary to craft these flasks if you have to. Otherwise, if you've already got a character and you've already got the flasks, just get 3 quicksilvers of adrenaline. It helps. We're also using 1 life flask and 1 mana flask just in case we need them. Now let's go over the base strategies for the different parts of this adventure. First of all, while running the ledge, you want to make sure that you move directly from entrance to entrance. You also want to check your inventory before reaching the waypoint, just in case you have been picking up chromatic items and such and you need to vendor because your inventory is full. Once you encounter an incursion, open the minimap and look for a visible exit that's nearby. If there's no visible exit nearby, then continue forward until you reach the next exit or the waypoint. If you want to attack, only attack if your Mirage, Archer or Onslaught are down. This is essential to keeping your speed up because the Mirage Archer will take care of enough mobs for your flasks to be refilled anyway. So let's quickly go over incursions next. First of all, when you look at your temple, you want to pick your targets in the rooms based on the room list that I'm giving on the next section. Unless you don't have access to certain rooms in the temple, these can be basic rooms too, just to make sure that you have access to them when the time comes. But if you have access to all the necessary rooms from the room you're in, head straight for the exit. Don't waste time killing monsters, as this will also grant you experience, which you kinda don't want. Again, it costs you scouring orbs when you level up. Don't forget that you have Vaal Rain of Arrows, if you have Vaal Rain of Arrows, and to use it on the Architect. This will help with your mana sustain and also bring him down a little bit quicker. Lastly, for the temple, you want to prioritize opening access to the apex, followed by granting access to every single room in the temple. While in the temple, don't get distracted by monsters, don't chase after them, you don't need to, there's pretty much no reason to. Before you enter the temple, plan the best route to take, just so that you have it in your head which way you need to go, and working off the previous point that you don't get distracted while doing it. So let's go over which rooms to go for and which rooms not to go for and so forth. First of all, the rooms that are good at any level and you see them, you upgrade them, you see them available, you turn the rooms into that sort of thing. First up, we have the storage room, which upgrades to warehouses and then into museum of artifacts. This houses a hodgepodge of random chests from the other rooms and can also yield some league specific uniques. It seems likely that the level requirement doesn't matter for the other league uniques that you can find in here, since someone allegedly found a headhunter from Act 2. So definitely keep an eye out for this one. It can yield pretty much anything you might want. Next we have the currency room, which is the vault, which upgrades to treasury and then to wealth of the Vaal. This will produce quite a substantial amount of low-end currencies such as alterations, jewelers, chromatics and so on, as well as a substantial amount of Vaal orbs. You won't find many chaos orbs in here ever, because it seems to be weighted towards dropping mediocre currencies, but that's fine. These kinds of mediocre currencies are the ones we run out of because we don't consider them too valuable. And again, Vaal orbs. Lots and lots of Vaal orbs. Next we have an interesting one, which is the Sacrificial Chamber that upgrades into Hall of Offerings and Apex of Ascension. Now the Sacrificial Chamber can sacrifice a unique for another unique. This doesn't seem to be bound by item level at all, so you know, maybe you turn your random piece of crap into a cow's heart. You don't know. It then upgrades into the Hall of Offerings, which is similar to the Sacrificial Chamber, except that it can now grant other league uniques, such as Headhunter or Brutus's Lead Sprinkler. And lastly we have the Apex of Ascension. Now this is the same as the second one, except that it targets the item type that you put in. So if you put in a belt, you get out a belt. So it is pretty important that if you want to farm for Headhunter with this method, that you keep a unique belt in your inventory. Otherwise, you can pretty much do whatever with it. You can also upgrade some of the uniques that you find in the temple. But what I'm using it for the moment is that off chance of getting a Headhunter. Next we have the workshop, which upgrades to engineering department and then to factory. This will just increase the item quantity from drops in the temple. This isn't that important, but it is something. Lastly we have the gem cutter's workshop, which upgrades to the department of thaumaturgy, which then upgrades into Duryani's Institute. This drops some pretty average gems at this level, but you could get things like Empower, Enhance or Enlighten, and you can also get quality gems to vendor for GCPs. Also, if you have access to high quality gems, the Duryani's Institute allows you to double corrupt your gems, which means that it applies 2 corruptions simultaneously, meaning that you could get a level 22 gem or a level 21 with 23 quality, or any combination of those. Okay, now we come to the rooms that are good but only at level 3. Now these are mainly the ones that drop the valuable items, such as the magic items with the cool mods for leveling or end game, but the end game ones don't matter. First up, however, we come with the corruption chamber, which at level 3 allows for the, let's call it an uber corruption, which basically can give 2 implicits. It can convert all the sockets of an item to white, or it can turn something into the new temple's exclusive unique chest. But I think what most people will be going for is the cool double corruptions on things like tabula rasas and other things at this point. Next we have the Toxic Grove, which upgrades from Poison Garden. The Defense Research Lab, which upgrades from Trap Workshop. The Sanctum of Immortality, which upgrades from Pools of Restoration. The Storm of Corruption, which upgrades from Tempest Generator. The Crucible of Flame, which upgrades from Flame Workshop. The Conduit of Lightning, which upgrades from Lightning Workshop. And the Hybridization Chamber, which upgrades from Hatchery. Now these all specifically give you a magic item or a unique at level 3, and before that they're pointless, they just add things to the temple. Lastly we have one room that's good at level 1, but we shouldn't upgrade it because the yield at this level is lower, and that is the Splinter Research Lab. Done a lot of testing with this. Level 3 and level 2 don't give many splinters. However, the Splinter Research Lab gives 4 to 6. And these splinters aren't level tied, so you can get Chayula splinters and all natal splinters from this. So if you get a Splinter Research Lab, try to keep it at level 1. So let's go over some of the rewards I've gotten from doing this for about a day or so. First of all of these uniques drop from there regardless of level. You've got the String of Servitude with all those cool mods. The Soul Catcher Flask, which allows you to use your Vaal skills a lot more. And then the Sacrificial Heart Amulet, which pretty much anyone leveling will be using at level 32. It's also a good target for double corruptions if you don't have anything else. You may get double corruptions, such as this Tabula Rasa I got pretty early on, which has +1 to level of socketed gems and 5% increased maximum life. Tabula Rasas can get pretty damn crazy now, guys. You can also find a host of leveling rares and magic items, such as the ones listed below. As you can see, there's a wide range catering for just about any build for leveling, and it's definitely worth having a few of these around, preferably in your guild stash if your guild can be trusted. And lastly, let's have a look at the currency I acquired for doing this for a couple of hours, probably 5 or 6 hours. As you can see, the alterations, chromatics, and Vaal orbs are the highlights here. I also found a bunch of other minor essences which I've already put in my essence tab, as well as 3 remnants of corruption and 8 orbs of binding. But as you can see, this is a pretty decent spread of low level currencies and alchemy orbs, so this is a nice thing to do at the beginning of the league. But as you can see, 1 chaos orb and a couple of chaos shards, but not many chaos orbs will come from doing this. So that's pretty much it for this part of the guide. My next objective is to try this out a couple more times, see what cool items I can get, and once I've got enough leveling items for the guild, I'm going to progress to level 36, and then I'm going to do the City of Sarn, if I've got the levels right. I'm going to progress to 10 levels above City of Sarn, and then I'm going to farm City of Sarn. That's the plan. So I'll let you guys know how that goes. It should be in the next day or so that I start doing this, and I will update you guys as soon as possible. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the content, please do like the video, and if you enjoy my content, then please do hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much, good luck, and stay juicy.